In 1832, a small family of Jewish refugees fled persecution with nothing but desperation in their eyes and a few valuables tucked into their robes. They could have gone anywhere: Europe, the Ottoman territories, North Africa, but strangely, almost unbelievably, they journeyed to India. And in just a matter of years, whispers began to spread across the port city of Bombay. People said these newcomers were becoming the Rothschilds of the East. Their generosity was unmatched. They donated money to the poor, built schools and hospitals, opened libraries, raised synagogues, and many saw them as symbols of hope. But beneath the shimmering surface of philanthropy, the true engine of their wealth came from an empire built on human suffering. And while the world admired their charity, the British Empire quietly applauded their darker motives. This is the story of the Sassoon family, and the shadow behind their rise. Modern-day Mumbai is a powerhouse. Its economy produces hundreds of billions of dollars, and its skyline glitters with towers of glass, concrete, and ambition. But if you peel back the layers of this city's history, the financial capital of India, you find one name that echoes again and again: the Sassoons. When they arrived in Bombay, they were refugees who had lost much of their wealth, but what they brought with them was more valuable than gold. They carried global connections, business experience, and an uncanny instinct for spotting opportunity. Bombay in the early 19th century was a British colonial port on the rise. The Sassoons realized instantly that the city would become a massive trade hub, and they invested heavily in cotton mills. Soon their mills became the heartbeat of Bombay's economy, powering prosperity far into the next century. Neighborhoods that once echoed with the sounds of weaving machines are today home to luxury malls and high-rise apartments, monuments to a transformation the Sassoons helped set in motion. Their philanthropy made them beloved. Schools, synagogues, docks, libraries, hospitals, these institutions still serve Mumbai's people today, shaping the character of an entire city. To the average person, the Sassoons appeared as generous benefactors lifting up society with their good deeds. But generosity can often hide the sins that lie beneath. Because the great Sassoon fortune did not come from cotton mills or real estate. It came from opium, vast rivers of opium illegally smuggled into China, destroying millions of lives. At the height of their power, the Sassoons controlled an estimated 70% of the world's opium trade. And since opium accounted for a significant chunk of Britain's income from India, the empire supported the Sassoons fully and unapologetically. Their wealth grew so immense that the British even elevated them into the ranks of nobility, granting them privileges that were almost never extended to non-white subjects of the empire. Their influence was that great. The story begins with David Sassoon in the late 1820s. He was the son of Sheikh Sassoon ben Sulla, treasurer of Baghdad's government. His father's position gave the family power, but it also made them targets. When the city's greedy governor turned on them, David was threatened, held hostage, and feared for his life. With his young family, he escaped first to Iran, seeking temporary safety. But he needed stability, and he needed opportunity. British India offered both. It is said that a British political agent even encouraged the Sassoons to settle in Bombay. The British saw Jewish merchants as ideal partners. Their numbers were small, they posed no threat, they had global connections, and they could help expand British economic control without ever challenging imperial authority. David arrived at the perfect moment. Bombay was rising fast, fueled by the cotton and opium trade. He brought with him an invaluable asset, a wide commercial network that spanned the Middle East. At a time when business depended on trust and relationships, his connections were worth fortunes. And unlike most merchants, David understood politics. He aligned himself closely with British interests, earning protection and privileges rarely given to Indians. He followed British conquests, strategically investing in territories the empire opened. But his greatest windfall came from China, where opium consumption was exploding. To understand why, we need a quick look at the global economics of the time. Britain was obsessed with Chinese tea, silk, and porcelain, products the Chinese were happy to sell, but they refused to buy anything from Britain in return. So all British payments had to be made in silver. Silver began draining from Britain at an alarming rate while China stockpiled it. To reverse this imbalance, the British flooded China with opium grown in India. Opium was addictive, destructive, and highly profitable. Chinese addicts paid for it in silver, and that silver flowed straight back to the British treasury. The Sassoons saw an opportunity. With the help of British officials who controlled India's opium production, they became the dominant exporters into China. In 1836 alone, they shipped more than 30,000 chests, each chest weighing over 100 pounds. Entire coastal cities in China were soon ravaged by addiction. Millions of lives were destroyed. But the Sassoon Empire flourished. Bombay adored them. Their philanthropy masked their business practices. People saw new docks, new schools, new hospitals, and believed in the family's goodness. The younger Sassoons expanded this reputation even further. They were so influential that Bombay's tramways created special Sabbath passes for Jewish passengers so they wouldn't have to handle money on Saturdays. Their reach extended not only across India, but into Britain itself. In 1853, David Sassoon was granted British citizenship, an honor bestowed on very few colonized subjects. Later generations would buy enormous estates in England, mingle with aristocrats, and build relationships with the royal family. One Sassoon became close to the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII. And through intermarriage, the Sassoons even tied themselves to the legendary Rothschild banking dynasty. But rising high often brings inner conflict. Many Sassoon descendants grew embarrassed by their origins. Their wealth, their identity, their empire, it all came from India and the opium trade, yet they longed to be accepted as fully British. They distanced themselves from their past, even from their own relatives who came visiting from India. It was a strange and painful identity crisis created by privilege, ambition, and guilt. Britain's victory in the Opium Wars made exporting Indian opium even easier. Chinese markets opened, and the Sassoon Empire reached its greatest heights. When David died, his son Albert Sassoon expanded the business further. In 1873, he became the first Jewish individual to receive the honorary freedom of the City of London, a distinction even the Rothschilds hadn't earned at the time. Their investments spanned continents: railways in America, properties in Europe, banks, insurance companies, and shipping lines. They controlled every link in their supply chain, from fields in India to steamships in the Indian Ocean to financial institutions in London. Their empire was a globe-spanning machine fueled by narcotics. Even as public disgust toward opium grew, the Sassoons were unfazed. Albert commissioned a family crest that proudly bore a poppy flower. But no empire stays unchallenged for long. After Albert's era, the next generation fractured. The business split into two competing firms, David Sassoon and Company and E.D. Sassoon and Company. Blood ties meant nothing in the cutthroat opium trade. The two families competed fiercely, undermining their dominance. The London branch inherited David Sassoon and Company, but its new leaders showed little interest in commerce. They saw the company as a bottomless fountain of wealth and preferred lavish lifestyles over hard work. Some even mocked their own fortune, calling it dirty money earned in the East. By 1939, the family's involvement in the company ended entirely. The business survived in name only, weakened and eventually deemed mismanaged by the British government. Meanwhile, the rival firm, E.D. Sassoon, took a different path under Victor Sassoon. Fearing political instability in India, Victor sold off assets and moved operations to Shanghai, then one of the world's most dynamic cities. For a time his gamble worked. He became the most prominent real estate figure in Shanghai, with properties worth billions in today's terms. And during World War II, Shanghai was one of the only places where Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution could enter without a visa. Victor and the Baghdadi Jewish community welcomed over 20,000 refugees, offering safety when almost no one else would. It became one of the most unexpected humanitarian chapters in the family's history. But fate struck once again. When China introduced sweeping nationalization policies, the Sassoon Empire in Shanghai collapsed. Properties worth over $1 billion were seized. Victor's bold relocation became his greatest mistake, and the fall of Shanghai marked the end of the Sassoons as a global power. Officially, their empire was gone. Unofficially, many believe it never disappeared. It simply slipped beneath the surface, hidden behind new names, new investments, and new networks. Old money rarely vanishes. It mutates. The Sassoons began as exiles fleeing danger. They rose to become titans of the East, mingling with royals, partnering with the British Empire, and leaving behind schools, hospitals, and cultural institutions still standing today. But their empire was built on the destruction of millions through the opium trade, and their downfall stemmed not from enemies, but from division, pride, and choices made within the family itself. They became a powerful force, then faded into history, and perhaps that was exactly what they wanted. Because fortunes like theirs rarely die, they dissolve into shadows, reappear in new forms, and endure quietly in the background. If you've stayed with me to the end, drop a flower emoji in the comments so I know you made it this far. And don't forget to scan the QR code or click the link in the description to join my newsletter and get videos a full day early. I've also made a detailed video on the Rothschild family that you can watch right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.